Hello guys, welcome to Solving Solutions, your number one channel where you get solutions to all your solving problems. It's nice having you in class again today. How have you been? We are going to look at how to calculate the missing readings of a leveling field book. So you can see we have a field book here, the station, backside, intermediate side, foresight, and then it is also being processed where we can have what the rise and fall and what the reduced level, right? Good. So I think the basic and the derived or something. Now we have a note. Now the note or the guide is here. Now there are basic things you need to understand that for rise or fall, basically this is one of the way you adjust, or let's say you process your leveling data, either the height of instrument or collimation method or the rise and fall method, right? Good. So for you to get either a rise or fall, it's actually backside minus intermediate side. So if it is positive, it's a rise. If it's negative, it's a fall, right? Good. So your intermediate side minus the next intermediate side minus foresight, or let's say we have backside minus foresight. So the sign determines whether it's a rise or it's a fall, right? Good. Now we also have another thing to note. The reduced level is equal to a benchmark plus backside. So let's say if you're trying to get the reduced level of maybe some point, it can actually be gotten from what the benchmark, that's where you're starting from, and hopefully where you want to close, plus what the backside where the staff was placed on that benchmark. So there is a check because that's actually one of the basic principles in surveying, right? Good. So performing checks. So for us to be sure that what we have done is correct, the sum of all the backsides minus the sum of all the foresides must be equal to the sum of the rise minus the sum of the fall, and that must also be equal to the last reduced level minus what's the first reduced level. So these are actually what the preambles. Good. So having established that, let's now come down to our field book. Or yeah, the leveling field book, right? Good. So we are trying to get values. Okay, let's try to make them different. Good. So we had to, make them look unique so that we would understand where we want to impute values and where we want to where we want to impute values, the missing values, right? Good. So now the first field we want to impute, or let's say the cell now, because we are using a spreadsheet. The first cell we want to impute value is actually here. According to the question, there should be a value here. So, from our relationship, which is somewhere around there, from our relationship which we have derived or which we are working with, your rise or fall can either be, your rise and fall can either be backside minus intermediate side minus next intermediate side minus foresight, or backside minus foresight, right? So the sign determines whether it's a rise or it's a fall. So from this first expression, we have seen that, let's try to move this somewhere there. From this first expression, we have seen that what we are supposed to have backside minus foresight to either give us a rise or a fall, right? Good. Because the order of operation comes down like this. It goes like a cross. Should I call it a cross? It goes diagonally like this, right? So not on this line. It comes from the top down. So if you want to get the rise and fall, that's why you can see these other cells are empty. These other cells from intermediate side, foresight, rise and fall on that first row, right? Good. It's always empty. So it goes down. So you have your backside minus foresight. Your maybe if it's somewhere around your backside minus intermediate side minus foresight. So as you can see from the formula, which means we are supposed to have what backside minus foresight to give us what a rise or a fall. So as we have said earlier, it's a rise if it's positive and it's a fall if it's negative. So and in simple mathematics, when you have 1 minus 2, it gives you minus 1, right? Good. Which means 1 is smaller than 2. So when you now say 2 minus 1, it actually gives you a positive 1, which is what 2 is greater than 1, right? So we are going to see what we are trying to explain now. So we have 2.15, that's 2.15 minus x, which is what? This x. This our unknown. This cell that is missing is represented by what? By x, right? Good. And it's now giving us what? A rise. Remember, we've been telling you that when you have a rise, it means that it is positive. That's why you can see positive 0.5. Definitely, when we have false, we are going to see negatives as we proceed. So we have what? 2.15 minus x equal to 0.5, which means 2.15 minus a particular value which is missing would give us this particular rise. So we don't know the value which is missing, so we have what? An expression for it. This now implies that minus x would now be equal to 0.5 minus 2.15. Just making minus x the subject of the formula. It's actually a very simple thing in mathematics, right? Good. So we have what? Minus x equal to 0.5 minus 2.15. So what we need is x, not minus x. So we can decide to multiply through by minus 1. Please ensure you get your calculator and also get writing materials, maybe pen, paper, or maybe if you're trying to use your screen so that you can follow us along, right? Good. So ensure you confirm these values because they are very, very important. So we have to multiply through by minus 1. So we have what? X here. Then instead of this to be plus, it becomes minus. And instead of this to be minus, it becomes plus. Right? Good. So we now have 2.15 minus 0.5. And that gives us what? 1.650. Right? Good. So that is actually the missing reading at this particular point. So for you to check if what we have done is correct, the order of operation is what? 2.15 minus what? 1.65, which is no longer missing again, so we know it. So your answer is what? 0.5, and the 0.5 is positive, therefore it is right. Are we together? So that's how you get what? The missing reading for that first line. Now the next missing reading we are going to get is what? 1.65 minus what? 2.35, because this cell is missing. This particular cell is missing, right? Good. So we don't want to click on our spreadsheet so that we don't close our solution. So you can see that what? This cell is missing, which is what? F5, right? Good. The cell F5 is missing. So what do we do? Since we already know that we are coming this direction, this cell minus this cell to give us the value we have here, right? Good. So this cell minus this cell to give us the value we have here. It simply means that we have what? 1.645 minus 2.345. And you know that since this is smaller than this, definitely you're going to get a negative answer. And your negative answer will definitely be what? Be a 4, right? Good. So ensure you confirm the value. We have what? 1.645 minus 2.345. And we have what? A negative value of what? 0.70, right? Good, that's 0.7. All our answers are try to round them up to 3 decimal places, right? Good. So we have what? Minus 0.70 meters. So that's the value of this particular missing cell, right? Good. Now let's come down to the next one. We have what? 2.345 minus 1.965. Remember that the next missing cell is this particular cell, which should be what? E6, right? Good. That's this cell E6. So when you have what? 2.345 minus 1.965, you get a value here, right? Good. So the value will now be, from our calculation, ensure you confirm it. 2.345 minus what? 1.6965. That's about 0.38. So that would be the value for this particular missing cell, right? Good. So you can see the values have been populated on this other part of the spreadsheet, right? Good. So all of these missing values, we have actually populated them here, and then we'll get back to them. So that's for 2.345 minus what? 1.965, and the value is positive, therefore it is a rise, right? Good. So ensure you pay attention to that. Let's now come back to our solution book. The next line is what? X minus, which means we have a cell here and we also have another cell here, which means there's supposed to be a value here that is missing. And from the formula we say what? Backside minus foresight will either give us what? A rise or a fall. Sorry, a rise or a fall, right? Good. So it means that we are missing a backside here minus what? A foresight to give us what? A fall. So now let's come to our expression. It means x minus what? The foresight equal to minus 0.4. And why is it minus 0.4? It's minus 0.4 because the value is actually under 4, or let's say the value falls under 4, right? So when the value is under rise, it's positive, or it has been positive, which we have been using, right? Good. So since this one falls under 4, or since this one is a fall, the sign will be negative, right? Good. So we have what? X, which is this cell, this should be B6, minus 1.825, which should be what? D7, what? Equal to minus what? 0.4. So that's the expression. Yeah, this is the expression. This now implies that our x will now be, if this crosses over to this side, minus 0.4 plus 1.825. So you're going to get what? Plus 1.425 meters, right? Ensure you confirm this value. So it's actually a very simple thing. When you have what? 1.425 minus 1.825, definitely you know that you're going to get what? A negative value, because this 1.425 is smaller than what? 1.825. So you are going to get what? A negative value. That's a 4. So are you okay with that? Good. Now let's look at the next section. We have what? 2.050 minus x, which is actually this, which should be what? B7 minus what? D8. So what this simply means is that there's supposed to be a value here. There's supposed to be a value for our foresight. However, since it's not available, we are going to get that right. Good. At this point, you need to pay attention to something very important. Now, if you look at this, our, let's call it our row 6. Let's call it row 6. Let's look at this line. If you look at this line, you can see that we have 3 missing values here, right? Good. We have our backside missing, we have our foresight missing, we have the value for rise missing. However, we are given what? The reduced level. So now let's come back to this point where we have populated the reduced level. So how do you get the values for the reduced level? You know, we have actually filled in 1.645. You've understood that we've done that. Minus 0.7, believe that you've understood that we've done that. So the reduced level of your next line will now be the reduced level of the preceding line plus or minus what? The rise and fall, right? Good. So if it is rise, you add. If it is fall, you subtract. So this next value will now be what? This plus or minus this. So since it is rise, it will be what? 45, 450 plus 0.45. Sorry, 0.5, right? So you have what? 450.5. Are we together? This should be 450.50, not 450.05. So this should be 450.50. Are we together? Good. So if that's 450.50, then the next cell will now be 450.50 minus this. So let's confirm that 450.5 minus 0.7, right? Good. So that should give you what? 449.8, right? Good. So the next reduced level will be what? 449.8 plus, because this is actually what? A rise, plus 0.38, right? Good. So that should give you what? 450.18. Are we together? Now that 450.18 minus a fall of what? 0.4. So minus 0.4 will give you what? 449.78. Ensure you confirm these values. Now let's come back to this, our last line. The last line, which is what? This line that contains our backsides, that does not have our backsides, our foresight, then is it the rise on that particular line. So what did we do? Let's come back to our solution book. We noticed that we have been able to deduce the reduced level up to this point, which is what? Which we just shown you, 449.78, right? Good. Now 449.78 and the subsequent reduced level, their difference, if it is going up, the next value what was a rise. So what do we mean by that? You know, if you look at these our reduced levels, this was gotten by adding this and this, or maybe subtracting this from this, right? Good. So what it means is that if you look at your subsequent reduced level and it is greater than the one before it, it means that there was a rise. And if it is smaller than the one before it, it means that what? There was a fall. So from that knowledge, we now said this fixed reduced level that was given to us from the question, you can see that it was given to us from the question, minus the reduced level that we have calculated, because we've seen that there are no backside, intermediate sides, rise or fall for us to use at this point, which means we are going to use what? Our reduced level value. So this is actually a point you need to what you need to pay attention to. So we now say 451.5 minus what 449.70, and of course the value is positive. The value is positive because you know that this 449 is actually smaller than 451. So for you to get to 451 from 449, you need to add to it. So that's actually the simple logic. So you now have what 1.720. So we now have a rise of 1.720. So having gotten the rise of 1.720, we've actually filled it on that particular what on that particular cell. Please, if you miss this part, you just have to pause, rewind, and you get it because it's actually very, very simple. So having established that we have what a rise of 1.70, 1.720, we now come down to the next part of the formula, which is what 2.05, and which is what is 2.05. So it means that 2.05 minus x will give us what 1.720. You know, this was also an x before now. It was an x because we got it by using 451.5 minus 449.78. But since it has been determined now, we can now use it as part of another formula to now determine another missing cell. Are we together? So it will now be 2.05 minus x because this first side we don't know it before now. So it will now give us what this 1.720, which is actually known. So if you now say 2.05 minus x equal to 1.720, this now implies that minus x is equal to 1.720 minus 2.05, right? Good. So when you change the sign, so it will now be what? Because you are trying to multiply through by minus 1 so that you now get a positive x. So you are now going to have what? 2.05 minus 1.720, and definitely your answer should be what? 0.330. Ensure you confirm these values. So that's how we got this our what? Our fall value of 0.330. Now the next thing is x minus 1.570 equal to 0.12. Now where is the x? This is the x because we don't know this cell from the field book given to us. You can see that this column is empty, right? With this cell rather, this cell is empty. So it will now be this cell minus what? This to now give us this, right? Good. So this is actually under rise, which means it is positive. Are we together? So we have what? X minus 1.57, which is this empty cell, minus 1.57 equal to positive 0.12. So that's what we have in this particular expression. This now implies that your x will now be 0.12 plus, because when this minus crosses the equality sign, it turns to plus, right? Good. So plus 1.57. So you are definitely going to have 1.690. Ensure you confirm these values. Perhaps there's a typo error somewhere. So when you have 1.690, which means you've actually populated what this what the value for your backside, right? Good. Now the next point is what 1.69 minus 2.1. There's a 1.69 here and then there's a 2.1 here, right? Good. So that's a direct subtraction. Backside minus foresight. So definitely you know that since this one is smaller than this, you're definitely going to have what a 4, right? Good. So we have what 1.690 minus 2.1 equal to minus 0.410, and it's a negative answer, and it's under what? It's under a 4 column, right? Good. So that's the 4. Then the next part is what we've still seen that there are cells that are empty on our foresight and on our right. So how do we achieve those values? We still come back to what we've done earlier, which is what getting to use what the reduced levels. Now we've shown you how to get subsequent reduced level. Reduced level will be what the reduced level of subsequent points will be the reduced level of the benchmark or of a preceding point plus or minus your rise and fall, right? So if it is rise you add, if it is fall you subtract, and you do that cumulatively. So getting to this point, we already have what 451.210 using the approach that we've shown you, and from the question we are given 451.250. We need to fill in a value in this cell. We also need to fill in a value in this cell, right? Good. So for us to first of all get the value on this cell, we are going to do what? Have 451.250 minus 451.210. Remember how we explained it to you. If it is going up, which means it's definitely going to be a rise, and if it's coming down, it's definitely going to be a fall. So we've seen that 0.210 and 0.250, 250 is bigger than what 210, which means it was a rise. So by the time we found the difference, we saw what 0.04, right? So we now have a value of 0.04 as our rise. Are we together? So since we have known this value, which was unknown before, we can now use it to find this other unknown value. So the relationship will now be what? 2.865, which is this 2.865, minus x, which we don't know, equal to 0.04, right? Which we have just known some seconds ago. Are we together? These things are very simple. So we now have what? Minus x equals 0.04 minus 2.865, right? Good. So as we told you earlier, you use minus 1 to multiply it through. So you now have what? 2.865 minus 0.04. Ensure you confirm these values. So you have something like 2.825. So that's actually what? 2.825. So that's the foresight value for this particular cell, right? So that is how you populate the missing values. However, that's not the end. One of the basic principles in surveying is that whatever calculation you've done, observation, whatever the case is, you perform check, right? So now, for us to perform a check, there's a formula that the sum of your backside minus the sum of your foresight must be equal to the sum of your rise minus the sum of your fall, and that must be equal to the last reduced level minus what? The first reduced level. So now let's come to our spreadsheet. On our spreadsheet, we have actually did the sum. So the sum of the backside is actually the whole of this, and it gave us a value of and it gave us this value 13.515, right? Good. Then the sum of what? Our foresight, which is what? This gave us what? A value of what? 12.265. The sum of our rise, it gave us a value of what? Please ensure you confirm these values. It gave us a value of what? 2.76. And then the sum of our fall gave us a value of what? 1.510. Right? Good. So having established all of this, let's now do our subtraction. So this cell will now be what? This sum of our backsides minus the sum of our foresight gave us what? 1.25. Then the sum of our rise, which is this, minus the sum of our fall, which is this, gave us what? 1.25. Then the last part of the expression, which says that the last reduced level minus what? The first reduced level, which is actually the cell, and it also gave us what? 1.25. Which means that if all these values are equal, it means that the way we have populated the missing readings in our field book is okay. And that means that what? The answer is okay. So you can see 1.25 is equal to 1.25 and it's equal to what? 1.25. So this is how you use what? This is how you fill in or how you calculate the missing readings of a leveling field book very easily, and then you are good to go. So if you have any question, comment, contribution, you can leave it on the comment section, or you can send us direct messages and we are going to get back to you. So until we see you on our next video, ensure you keep staying safe, keep being a good surveyor, a good engineer, whatever field you find yourself, and ensure you have a very good time.